The real estate financial crisis happened in '08, '09. So things were tough. So some of the people, international students who were graduating that year, did not find jobs. Jobs are hard. And I
True.
initially came to America thinking I wanted to be a diplomat. I'm like, I want to be an ambassador for Nigeria. That's so far from what I do now. Um, that's what I thought I was going to do when I came to the States initially. But then I saw during that financial crisis, like jobs were hard.
Hmm.
And I saw the people who got jobs were people who were doing like very practical things, like accounting, finance, just like very like practical things. Because a lot of people who want to do like peace and social justice or some of those other related fields had to go to like grad school. Like, there was no job. So the only way to keep staying in the country was to go to grad school.
Welcome to the Thriving Immigrant podcast with Paul Adeyeye. This is where we share powerful stories of resilience, reinvention, transformation, and success. So, whether you're a new immigrant, navigating a new life, or an aspiring entrepreneur looking for inspiration, this podcast is for you. Join me as we dive into real conversations with incredible individuals who have turned challenges into opportunities. Let's learn, grow, and thrive together. Cheers to a life of abundance. Hello, welcome to the Thriving Immigrant podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. And if you're listening to me for the first time, I say thank you. Welcome to the channel. Please hit the subscription button so you can get notified when new episodes like this drop. And if you're a returning subscriber or a returning listener, thank you for coming back. Today, I'm really thrilled about the conversation I'm about to have. I've got an amazing person on the show. His name is Ehis. I don't want to pronounce his last name.
Akhetuamhen. Ehis Akhetuamhen.
Ehis Akhetuamhen. Ehis
Yes.
Akhetuamhen is a Nigerian-born, US-based finance professional, and is also the host of the podcast Unmuted Moment podcast. I really love the name. We are both podcasters. Now, he currently works in mergers and acquisitions at Google. So it's not every time you meet someone who works at Google. That's why I'm excited to have Hayes. He's going to tell us everything about how he got the role at Google. And the interesting thing about Hayes is his career has been quite impressive. He doesn't do small companies. He's going to tell us his secrets. And he shares a lot of content online on LinkedIn. And I can't wait to dive into this conversation. So, welcome, Hayes, to the Thriving Immigrant podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's nice not to be the one asking the questions. Actually, I have my own podcast, as you mentioned, Muted Moments, and I've done a lot of episodes. But this is actually the second time I'm a guest on someone else's show, so I'm excited. And also having Canadian audience, hopefully here. So I'm going international. I'm excited.
Awesome. You're going international. You're our neighbor. I can't wait to have the conversation too.
Same here.
All right. So, Hayes,
Yeah.
welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You've been in the US for quite a while. My first question to you would be, do you want to walk us through your immigration journey? How did you find yourself in US?
So I just a quick background on myself. So I was born and raised in Benin City, Nigeria, which is the capital city of a state called Edo State. It's one of the smaller states in the south of Nigeria. My actual immigration journey, I think, started even before I was born, and I will tell you why. So my dad grew up, I think before he was 10, both his parents passed away. And you know how in Nigeria, if your parents pass away, you go to leave a relative, like your uncle's house or your auntie's house or whatever. So in his case, he had to go to the big city, Lagos. And the relative he lived with were also of modest means, which is a nice way of saying they were very poor. Um, but somehow along the line, I don't know where, but he had this dream of studying abroad. So he used to write. In those days, you had to like write actual letters in the mail to the schools to get their brochures and materials. Not like now, you just go on any school's website and you request more information. And you can get brochures and whatnot. Um, so in those days, he actually had to like write letters to those schools. So he did that a lot. So by the time I got in the picture, he got married to my mom. I was born. Like there was a lot of brochures in our house of schools from the UK to US, Canada. You know how those brochures used to be like very beautiful. They would have like students who are laying on the grass doing picnic. Some of them playing frisbee. Some of them having their pets. They would show students with their white coats in the lab, the nice library. So all the stuff. So I grew up like looking at all those images all the time.
Mm.
So I think from a very early age, I just sort of had that dream that I wanted to go to one of those schools. Like that was my dream. For my dad, I mean, he had the dream. I mean, he was looking for scholarships. It didn't work out for him. And then he got a family, he got us. So I'm one of four. I'm the first of four. So that dream, he kind of parked that dream aside, to raise me and my sibling. But he also passed relatively young. I was 13. So he passed actually 2 days before my 13th birthday. And at that point, I think at that his dream became essentially mine. That's where like I'm like, okay, this now I have to make this thing work. Like that was my singular focus in life. Like I had to make this thing work. And then, but my mom was, you know, those people who sell, like she has like a wheelbarrow, like a cart where they put food. And so we live in the place where they had a lot of construction sites, like new buildings and such. So she would like cook early in the morning, like put in a little wheelbarrow, a little cart, and like go to the different like construction sites and like sell food to the construction workers. So obviously, so that she didn't get much money from that. But I still had that dream. So she would always tell me like, so how are we going to afford this?
I was thinking,
uh, yeah. So, but I did not let the finances deter me. I was just determined that somehow, somewhere, it was going to work out. Scholarship, whatever, it was going to work out. Yeah. So, so my mom sold food to construction sites growing up and didn't make a lot of income from it. And at that time, I would go online and order or request a lot of brochures from the various universities. And I think part of the story too is my dad, before he passed, worked at they call them business centers in Nigeria at that time, where you could go to print a letter. Because those days people didn't have computers at home or whatever. Like you had to go, if you want to do any official document, you have to go to a business center. It's like for people in the States, like FedEx Kinkos, we call them Kinkos. They have like office places where you can go like print a document, make copies, scan. So he worked at a business center when I was growing up, like I was like 6 or 7. So this was like in the 97, 96, 97, 98, around that time period. But during that time is when the internet was coming to Nigeria, at least to my town. It was coming to Benin City. And the owner of his little business center was then converted that business center to like a cyber cafe. So for listeners who are not aware what a cyber cafe is, this is a place where you pay some money. You pay for an hour, you pay for 2 hours, you pay for some amount of time, and then you have access to a computer to use the internet. That's what it was those days. No one had cell phones or smartphones or had laptops at home. So that's the only way to access the internet in those days. So, but because after school every day, I'll go hang out with him. So I had access to internet and that type of thing. So I do think in my story that gave me an edge in those early days when even in Benin City, not a lot of people even know what internet was at that time. So when so when he passed, so I would save my lunch money for days, not like a day's worth of lunch money could not afford an hour in those cyber cafes. So like it's usually like 3 or 4 days. I would save my lunch money, wouldn't eat at school, and then I'll go to the cyber cafe to buy an hour, buy 2 hours, and I'll spend hours and hours like going to college board website, like just like browsing through all the universities looking for scholarships. Somehow, somewhere, I stumbled upon this school called Berea College, which I ended up going to. It's a very unique school in the US where they do not charge tuition to anybody, whether you're a US domestic student or international student. It's a small school though, like 1,600 people. So 400 people per class. And typically they only try to take around 25 to 30 international students, and they try to keep it between the 1 or 2 students per country. But the cool sort of story about the school, one, it was one of the first interracially integrated schools in the South in those days where the US South was racially segregated. This was one of the very first schools to integrate. So it was formed by abolitionists, people who were against slavery in those days. And so they had this whole idea of providing education for free for the less fortunate or people from low income. So they've been doing this since 1855. I don't know how many years that comes out to be, but for a long time, they've had sort of this history of free education to people who cannot otherwise afford it. So like for me, for example, like my kids now will not be accepted to that school. Why?
Yeah,
Because it's only for low income people, which is a
Yeah.
great thing. It's the only school where like we call it like the best education money cannot buy. Because no matter how wealthy you are, or actually if you're wealthy, that disqualifies you. to go to school. So it's only people who could not afford it otherwise. That's the school's mission. But anyways, so in those days of going to the cafe and stuff, I would go and I would pay time or buy hours and spend time looking at all this website, and I would author their brochures. I would request the brochures. So I was doing the same thing my dad did, only he did it on pen and paper. Now I'm doing it online.
You went digital.
Yeah, I went digital. So in my house, like every day, the mailman would deliver like this much like books, brochures from different schools. Again, it's very pretty pictures. And mom was like, "How much is that school?" I'd be like $40,000. Like, how much is that school? $50,000 per year, $40,000 or $50,000 per year. Now, school, I don't know what the tuition now is. I'm sure it's way, way more than that now. But even the application fees, it was most schools was like $40 or $50 just to apply, not tuition, just to even apply in the first place. And to be honest, we couldn't even afford just the application fee. Not to talk about $40,000 for a whole academic year. But this school, so Berea College did not charge tuition. It did not charge tuition. It also did not charge an application fees. So I ended up, of all the like hundreds or maybe thousands of schools that I looked into and got brochures from, at the end of the day, I only applied to one, which is the Berea College. Just the one. It was, yes, just the one. And I mean, now actually after coming here, I heard that the things like application fee waivers, if you're from like a low income family, you can actually like apply for application fee. I didn't know about those type of things then. I just was looking for the school that did not charge that, and this was the only school I found that did not charge an application fee. So it was the only school I applied to, and fortunately for me, I got it. But anyways, so another story with my sort of journey to get here, to get to the States. In those days, when I used to go to those cafe and apply request for these brochures, so I made a relationship with the mailman. So this guy, he used to come to my house all the time to deliver me the brochures from the schools all the time. So we became like friends. But every time he comes, he wants to hustle me. He'd be like, "Hey, can you get me some egg roll today?" Give me Coke and egg roll. So for people who don't understand, so egg roll is like a snack.
Yeah.
In Nigeria. So he would every time try to shake me down for something. Like, buy me this thing or buy me that thing. Because every day he's coming with like big piles of paper. So anyways, I developed some relationship with him during that process. So so I mentioned the application fee was free, but even sending the application, at least in those days, the application was like an actual hard copy. Like you had to like get your transcript, your SAT scores, all the materials for the application. You have to mail it like hard copy. An actual hard copy. And I went to FedEx, I went to DHL, UPX. It was like $100 to mail the stuff to the school in the States. And my mom did not have $100. Another problem. But so this is where the relationship with that guy came in handy. The mailman guy. So I went to him and said, "Hey, I have this problem. I'm trying to apply to this school in the States. I don't have the $100 that DHL, UPS, and those guys are asking. Like, is there a way you can help me with your connections in this is NIPOST, the Nigerian Postal Service." Yeah. And then he said, "Okay, yes, I could do it for half the price, so $50." So at that time, I'm like, this guy, he's all shaking me down. Like, would he even like send my application materials? Would he just like use it to go buy some egg roll and Coke for himself? But it was one of those. Yeah, but it was one of those things where I was so desperate that I had no choice. Like, this was the best alternative, and so be it. Like, it was gonna work out, or he was not gonna work out. But this was my only choice, so I did. So I gave him $50. And he said he mailed it. And the school was supposed to come back. This was in like February of that year, January, February. And the school said it was supposed to let people know of the admissions decision by April. And April came, went. May came, went. June came, went. Like nothing. I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear a yes or a no. So I assumed the guy did not send him. Like, yep. My fears came true. This guy just ate my money. He didn't send my application, not knowing that the school, I got the admissions letter. They sent it via email, and this was a time in my life where I didn't even have money to afford to go to the cafe and stuff. So I never even went there. So I didn't even know. Like, I did not check my email for like months, not knowing there was an admission letter in my inbox. I didn't see up until they eventually sent me a hard copy, like July or something like that, or June, July, or whatever. They sent me a hard copy. That's when I saw it. I'm like, what? And that the dates you had to respond back was already past the deadline, because you have to respond back to accept the admissions by X date. This was way past that, so I had to like rush to the internet cafe and like check my email and then respond, say, "Sorry, I'm just now seeing it. Can I still come?" And they said yes, and then go do all the stuff. And anyways, So that's sort of the whole like journey of so my immigrant journey, how it started. And since coming here again, I did accounting finance and undergrad. I went to Berea College, as I mentioned, and then I've just been going from one company to another company to another company. And today I'm at Google, and I live in Atlanta with my family.
Wow, I'm so invested in your story. I didn't want you to stop.
I thought I shared I thought I go back one or two levels to share the whole story.
Thank you for sharing, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate with your story. The thing about storytelling is so powerful that you share them casually and you don't know that you are inspiring someone. Because chances that somebody is listening to you in one remote place right now and is taking action on his life. Thank you
I
for
hope so.
thank you for sharing. So where in Lagos were you living then?
No, no, no. I live in Benin. I was my dad was the one who,
Went
when
to
his parents passed, he they took him. The relative he lived with were in Lagos. I and my siblings were all born in Benin. We live in Benin.
Benin.
So until I moved to the States, I never lived any place else beside Benin. Up until I came to the States.
Okay. So you got the admission. How
Yeah.
did you get your flight money?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. That was a community effort. It was a very it took the whole village. It was a real community effort. So it was one of those where like this uncle would chip in here, that uncle would chip in here, this person from church chips in here. Even with all the people who chipped in, it was still did not make the like we didn't fully get the total amount. We still had to make like my uncle still had to like borrow some money that we have to pay after I got here. So yes, it was definitely a community effort of one uncle, auntie, church member, friends, everybody
Wow.
had to chip in. Yeah,
So you came to the US before you turned 18,
correct. The 17.
just 17, and you had no family member to stay with.
Nope, nope, nope,
You
nope.
just started your life on your own.
Exactly,
Wow.
exactly.
That must have been quite challenging.
It was. And part of why I do some of the things I do today, whether it's my podcast, my storytelling, some of the content, um, is to inspire people with my story and some of the things that I went through that like we all don't have to go through the same thing. You can learn from other people's experience. And if you go on my LinkedIn today or you see me today or the kind of stories I tell today, you just think like, oh, it's easy to think that I've always had it made. Like I came from a privileged background, perhaps, and like maybe I went to like a very good private school, perhaps, and everything kind of worked out. But no, you just that's the thing about like social media too, right? You got to know like you
Yeah.
just see like the final product, the brushed up product. You
So
don't see all the journey and the winding that it took to get there. So part of my mission today with my podcast too is to sort of peel the onion, to go back one, go back two level, to show the journey and the challenges that people go through to get to where they are today. Because it's so in our world today with Instagram and TikTok, LinkedIn, whatever. Like we're so focused on the output, we're so focused on the output, what we can see today, and we don't. I feel like we don't talk much about what gets you there.
yeah.
And I think there's a lot of things to be gained from exploring that and learning from the people who have done it. And hopefully you don't have to make the same mistakes that they made in your own journeys.
Absolutely. I agree with you. That makes a lot of sense. Wow. Wow. From the age of 17, I know a lot of people move to this part of the world at, let me say, at some tender age, but it's rare to find someone that's gone through a lot that couldn't even afford to pay for admission fees. Wow. So did you enjoy some maybe support from the school? Like how did you survive apart from paying for the tuition?
Yeah, so the school they really do their very best to take care of us from
Okay.
a financial standpoint. So they have a work study program. So Berea College is one of the few schools in America that they call them work study programs. So I mean most schools you can I'm sure in Canada as well where I mean, you can go to school and work on your own. But
Right.
those are like your own, like you just get a job. But this one is like a very structured program that's like part of you getting your degree at Berea College is you have to have an on-campus job. It's like a requirement. It's not
Oh,
just
I
like a
see.
nice thing to do. So you get to, but in those days, but you don't get the minimum wage was $7 in states. I think it's still $7 and it's 7.25 or something, the federal minimum wage. But at Berea College, the minimum wage was like $3 at that time. So we weren't making the legal because it was a walk study program. So we weren't it wasn't
Yeah.
like following the regular standard. So but at least you made something. So I made enough money to be able to because at the time too, there was no cell phones. So cell phones was not common, it was not a thing. So everyone
Right.
had like a room, a landline in your room. And when I want to call home, you have to go buy a phone card. Like to have
Like
a
a
pin, you have
card.
to scratch the pin. You know, that's the you have to dial some number. They'll ask you to put in your pin, you put in your pin, and then you connect to home. But so even affording that was a challenge. Affording the pin, whatever service to be able because those is like $10 or whatever to call for 30 minutes or an hour.
I know.
Now, obviously, now it's a lot cheaper with like Skype, with it's Skype. I'm aging myself with WhatsApp and
Yeah.
FaceTime and all this stuff.
Internet and all that.
Um, so that job though, those little jobs we had, what that's for 10 hours, it was mostly 10 at a minimum, you had to work 10 hours per week. But sometimes you could go past, you go to 15 hours. But at least I was able to get the funds to be able to buy those phone cards or like go to Walmart sometimes. And because we had food through the cafeteria, so my room and board was also covered as part of my sort of total package besides just tuition. Um, but anyway, every now and then too, like you don't want to eat the cafeteria food, you want to eat your own food, and so that $30 per week or however much I made per week. Sometimes you squeeze some to buy a phone card to call home. You squeeze some to be able to go to Walmart and buy your own bread or buy your own whatever, your own milk or whatever you want to buy on the side. And sometimes you go to McDonald's. Sometimes like you see those like fast foods, you on your way to different things. Like you see those like nice fast food restaurants. Like sometimes I want to stop by a Wendy's. You know what I mean? And
Right.
get a frosty or get a bargain. So those that $30, the change we made from our work study program definitely came in handy. But just from the cultural shock, for me, I had a very strong, I don't know, say fear of not speaking like the way people spoke in
Yeah.
school or whatever environment I found myself. So I was very conscious of my accent. So it impacted
Mm.
me in a lot of ways, most notably in classroom, like in the class setting where because in Nigeria, a lot of class, like the way the education system is set up, it's heavy tests and heavy exams,
Yeah.
right? You do a class for however many months, and at the end of the year, it's when you have your test exams, and those are the things that count the most. Well, in America, it's not the same. You do a lot of things in between, like a lot of quizzes, a lot
Exactly.
of presentations, projects. You do a lot of things that could also be very heavy on your total score. Um, and it was all very new to me, like class participation, like raising your hand, saying stuff. Like sometimes your teacher will call on you and you have to have an answer. I remember my first quiz. You had quizzes then. This was like maybe 1 or 2 weeks into the school year, into the semester. Like they were already giving us like quizzes, and it was one of those like pop-up quiz where you weren't expecting it, and I failed. I got I don't know what an F or something, whatever I D or whatever. I like one of my classes, the very first quizzes I had, I failed it. But anyways, that was a wake up call for me though.
Mm.
Um, and I knew I was still very reluctant to speak up in class, but I knew I had to like study hard. So at least in the written exam, whenever we had any like written tests or written quizzes and stuff, like I did well in those. I'm like, all right, even if I'm not going to do well on the participation side of things, I'm going to do very well on the written side of things. So I felt like I probably did not maximize my time in college in those
Mm.
early days because I was so afraid of speaking up because I thought that it was going to look bad. I mean, like people are going to know that if I didn't speak up, nobody's going to know where I'm from and nobody's going to know anything about me. And I could just come
Yeah.
to class and take myself home and that's it to my dorm. But once I spoke up, people now are like, where's this guy
Where is
from?
this
Like you
from?
sound different kind of thing. And I don't know why, but I just did not want to confront that
Mm.
idea of feeling like I was an other, like I was from someplace else. I just did not want to like have to deal with that or have to like face that. So that sort of went on. But I did in college though. One of my most transformational sort of part of my life happened in college. In that class I mentioned where I failed the quiz. I had a professor, Dr. Michelle Tully. She's passed now. Rest in peace, Dr. Tully. She like took me in. She I guess she kind of knew like this guy was a smart guy, but he just wasn't comfortable like speaking up and expressing himself. And like whatever she had like projects outside of classroom and stuff, she would pull me in to help out. I remember there was a project we went to do in Louisville, Kentucky. So I went to school in the state of Kentucky. So Louisville is the biggest city in the state of Kentucky. And her project was going into housing projects. So like these are like public like I don't know what you guys call it in Canada, but like here, different cities would have like public housing projects, and some of those
Okay.
projects in some of the big cities in America could be very, very rough. Like
Mm.
some of them could be very, very rough in terms of like crime, in terms of just the state of the buildings themselves. Like they're not like in good shape at all. So there was a program then when the federal government was trying to revitalize those public housing projects. Essentially, they're trying to like break them down and build new ones. But the problem was the poor people who live in this project, when by the time they build them up, rebuild them, they essentially were displaced. They couldn't come back to the nicer place. So they took them out to build it, and when they built it, it's like more middle income people, more people who were more well to do, were able to come back. So like only like a third of the old residents were able to come back. Anyways, I said this to say I had to go into those. So we're doing a project, essentially trying to assess how this project went, the end result, how if the people who this program was supposed to help, which is the low income people, if this program actually helped them. So I was forced to go into the projects. So these people were like some of them ended up in other projects in other places, parts of the city. So I had to go do interviews with them. So
Okay.
this was like my first summer. Like I had to go to the houses of strangers. I had to go knock on the door,
Mm.
people who I do not know, and introduce myself and say, "Hey, I'm with this university or this college. We're doing a project like this. Do you have 10 minutes to sit down and talk?" And that to me, that was like a big deal. I'm like, every time I went to knock at the door, like I would pray.
Wow. That was the
and
moment that
but
everything changed.
that was very pivotal. It was a very pivotal moment for me in my journey because, I mean, some people are very nice. Like you meet some very nice people, like, "Oh, welcome you in." They would like, do you want water? Do you want something to make you comfortable? And then you ask your questions. They'll be very attentive to you. They'll work with you. Some people are just like, I don't blame them to like a stranger who you don't know. Say, "Hey, can I come into your house and sit down and ask you some questions about this nice home you're supposed to have, but you didn't have it?" You know what I mean? Um,
Mm.
so, anyways, I say this to say like this professor also had a profound impact on my journey,
Okay.
pulling me in, helping me, pushing me to participate in projects like that. And so all of that stuff, yeah, it wasn't like one day. Like even doing that project did not make me come out of my shell automatically. I still had to go through different things. And then the
Yeah.
next step was in the corporate world. Like school is different. You know what I mean? Like school, you could just put your head down, like really work hard and like take those written exams and do well and get an A. And yes, we all celebrate. But in the workplace,
It's
it's
different.
it's different. It's not just about the work that you put in. It's not about your technical skills only, right? It's also about a big part
Yes.
of it is
Soft
the
skills.
yes, it's the perception. What
Mm.
people think you're capable of doing, not so much what you're capable of doing itself, right? So it's knowing to also manage that part. Not just I think early on a lot of like immigrants in my experience, like they focus on like the technical piece of it. Like I'm going to study hard and take the CFA exam and be a CFA because that's like a very objective thing, like
Yeah.
CFA. Oh, I'm a CPA. Those are very like objective things to do. But managing how people perceive you, managing your communication skill, like raising your hand in those meetings to like putting yourself out there to talk, that is going to determine a long way like how you get those promotions, how you do well. So in my case, I felt like early in my career there were some promotions I did not get that I felt like I deserved because I was not vocal enough. Because there
Mm.
were people who were similar to me in my similar position who I felt like were more out there, were more outgoing, was more expressive of themselves. I just kind of believe that if I do good work, my work would
Work wish.
speak for itself. Like I didn't
I
have to
like
do anything.
I
Like
like
I
the
didn't have to,
point.
yeah, I didn't have to say anything. I didn't believe like I had to like invest any time in
Mm.
advocating for myself or even like seriously speaking to my manager and say, "Hey, here's the goal." Like to make sure like they really understand like what I want. I just assume everybody knows that if I work hard, I'll get promoted. And you know what I mean? Like that's what I expected. Like I thought they expected that from me too. And again, there was a gap there because I guess in their mind they thought I was fine. Like you know what I mean? They didn't think like that was something that I was aiming for, and they didn't say it. So in retrospect, I don't blame them for like because they didn't think it was something that was important to me because I didn't tell them it was important to me. So
Yeah.
all of those different experiences are what inspires me to do the kind of thing I do today. Whether it's the podcasts I mentioned or some of the content that I share on LinkedIn.
Wow, that's so powerful. Thank you for sharing. And I could see your passion in the way you talk about these stories, and I can relate with almost everything you've said. I have a lot of questions for you, but I'm not sure if we get to everything today.
Let's hit those we can. We can always do a part two.
Yes, but one of the most fascinating thing about you that I find very fascinating and I really admire is your career profile. And I was admiring it even before I learned your story, even before I heard about your story. But now hearing your story, I'm really curious. How did you find yourself in all those top organizations?
I
Like you
think for me,
started with
it's
KPMG and
yep. It's really come down to one thing. It's really been relationships and connections. Um, I was lucky to, in college, to realize the power of like having a relationship with your professor. I feel like it's very underrated. A lot of people go through like college or like an MBA program or master's without really developing a relationship with their professors. I think it's a missed opportunity if you go through college or an MBA or graduate school without that type of relationship. Um, so as I mentioned, my first Dr. Michelle Tully, she was the sort of first person who took me under her wings. I also had an accounting professor. This was later on, toward the junior senior year in college, who I also was close to. I would tell him like, hey, like at that time, just for some context, I was in college. I started college in 2007. So the financial crisis, the real estate financial crisis happened in 08, 09. So things were tough. So some of the people, international students who had graduated in that year did not find jobs. Jobs were hard. And I
true.
initially came to America thinking I wanted to be a diplomat. I'm like, I want to be an ambassador for Nigeria. So far from what I do now. That's what I thought I was going to do when I came to the States initially. But then I saw during that financial crisis, like jobs were hard.
Hmm.
And I saw the people who got jobs were people who were doing like very practical things, like accounting, finance, just like very like practical things. Because a lot of people who want to do like peace and social justice or some of those other related fields had to go to like grad school. Like, there was no job. So the only way to keep staying in the country was to go to grad school. And I knew it was like a lot of, as I mentioned, like there was a lot of sacrifices where people who chipped in to get me here. So I'm like,
You
I need to
just
start, helping my family, supporting my family back home. So I was just thinking like, okay, what is that thing that's more practical that would give me the best odds of getting a job? And I did know a senior at that time who she had an internship in New York, was a KPMG. So I'm like, you know what? I knew she was able to get a job, so I want to do exactly what she did. I want to do exactly what. So I actually changed my major from political science to accounting and finance because of her. I want to just
mm,
follow her path. And in that, so I in doing accounting, I got close to this Professor Ed McCormick, and I told him my story. I told him everything, and then he it was the one who actually recommended me to. Some we had some alums who were like partners, like very senior people at KPMG. So he sent my resume down, told them I was one of his best students and all that good stuff. And then the alumni told their recruiter to make sure to call me, and so it's it's one of the, as I said, it's one of the underutilized resources because I could have just gone on the KPMG website or whatever company website and I just put in an application. But oftentimes it's a black box. So that should not be your focus when applying for a job. It shouldn't just be like,
mm,
where's the button I can press? Just send your resume. Poof. Because if it's easy for you, it's easy for a million other people to do. Like everyone is doing the same thing. So you got to think like, what can I do extra? And part of it is usually like, what connections do I have at that company? Whether it's through your professors in my case or through like classmates or somebody. And in these days and age where there's social media is linked, you can just look somebody up, like reach out to a number of people. Some people might ignore you, but you might get one or two people who be like, oh yeah, let's talk about this stuff. And I could do a referral for you. Um, and so that's a KPMG was true a professor. And my next job at Goldman was also true somebody. Um, so one of my colleagues at KPMG, he had left KPMG to go to Goldman Sachs. And to be honest, I did not at that time. I thought I was going to be like a career KPMG person. I was going to be a partner one day. That was going to be because I really had a mentor who he was a partner when I was like a first year, second year. He really took me under his wings.
mm.
Like this guy was I think he'd lived abroad, like he lived in Iraq, in Russia, he lived in a lot of places in the Middle East. But anyways, he was very like open and used to like people from other cultures
I
and
see.
such. And then he kind of like he would this guy even knows more at the time at least like he knew more about the stuff that was happening in Nigeria than me because of me he would monitor like stuff that goes on in Nigeria. Like, hey, did you know this happened in Nigeria last night? And then, Like that's how close we were. Like I'm like, oh yeah, I did not. I wasn't following the news in Nigeria. I don't know what's. Oh, that happened. Oh, that's cool. Or like he'd tell me about the soccer team, about this African championship, or whatever was going on. Like he was very invested in me. And so, and at KPMG though, I did get an early promotion because I mean I worked hard too. But like he was one of those guys where like he's very vocal. And his words carried weight. Like I think you need that in mentors, not just like any mentor. You need people too who you know that they are willing to speak on your behalf, and you know if they do speak, their word carries weight.
Wait, that's a sponsor.
So he was, yeah, exactly. He was one of those guys for me. So I said this to say that I thought that was gonna be my career because I really like had a very strong relationship with this guy. He was like making my life easy for me. He was making it was opening doors for me, giving me promotion, giving me whatever I needed. So that was what I thought I was gonna do. But then this guy, we were in the same team at KPMG. He left to go to Goldman Sachs. We still kept in touch. Like we would touch base like once a month, would like just like talk how things are going. In one of our conversations, he was like, "There's this role in my team. Like, would you be interested?" I'm like, "Oh, with Goldman Sachs, why not?" You know what I mean? So I wasn't like looking for a job. I wasn't like, it was just an opportunity that came up, and I'm like, "All right, I'll interview for it." I interviewed for it. I got it. I'm like, I mean, sorry, the pay was better, the name was better, everything was better. I'm like, I
Why
really thought I
not?
might, I know, I really thought I might do this for the long term, but like this was a good opportunity. But again, like in retrospect to, I mean, I don't regret, I guess, taking that step, but I didn't have the type of sponsorship I had at KPMG. Actually, I think throughout my career till today, I don't think I've ever had. I mean, I've had a lot of mentor sponsors. I still do today, but not at that level. Like that guy in my very first role, like he's probably like the best sponsor I've ever had, who was genuinely interested in me, like not just like lip service. Like this guy, as I said, he would follow the news because of me. He'd be like, "Oh, there was, I think
Wow.
I forget. There'll be like different conflict. You know how sometimes there's like different like conflict in different like parts of Nigeria. But oh, I heard this didn't happen. Is your family okay? Like I didn't. I'm like, no, it happened in the north. We're in the south, so my family's fine. But he genuinely cared about me.
Hmm.
Um, I've never had till today in the last I've been working since 2011, almost 15 years. I've been like in the workforce. I've never had somebody who was as invested in me and my
That's that
well-being as
guy.
that guy did. So anyway, we still like I want to keep in touch, but like LinkedIn, he still likes my stuff on
Oh wow.
LinkedIn and such. But he was very key. So that was how I got my golden retriever relationship. And even my Google was also through a relationship. I went to school for my MBA in Chicago. I went to Northwestern, but it was also another school, University of Chicago, which is also in Chicago. And I sort of made some friends who were also going to business school around the same time. So we hang out in Chicago. We're all in Chicago together. And so when I did investment banking before I did Google. But when I was getting ready to like do something else, I knew I reached out to him and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing something else. Google would be a good place." And then he's like, "All right, I would talk to some people for you. I would do a referral for you or whatnot." And he helped me through the process. And that's how I got it. So I've never, not just never. Yes, I don't think in any of the jobs I've gotten, I don't think I've ever gotten the job because I went to a website and like clicked a button. It's always been
Wow.
through a professor, through somebody. And most of the times it's after I have gone through the application process, gotten a job, then say, "Oh, by the way, go fill out the form." They're like, "Oh, there's this thing we got to do." Then I'm like, "Oh, okay, sure." But at that point, it's not for anything. It's just for like some paperwork.
Yeah.
You just need to know the information for the background checks and all that good stuff. So when I sort of mentor people today, I try to encourage them to not just like take that easy route of just like clicking buttons. That's not what they do. Like sit down in front of a computer and just like press applicate like the submit button all day long. But to spend some time to invest in some relationships. Even in your current job, right? You may not like your current role now, but you never know where these people are gonna go. As I mentioned, like
Exactly.
it was my ex-coworker, someone who I worked with before, who went to Goldman Sachs. That's how I moved there. Like you never know how people are gonna turn out. So not just like the partner I said, he was a high level guy, but this guy was also he was my level. He was my colleague. So it's not just also spending time with the people who are higher up, but also people at your level. You never know. And also too, I mean, sometimes not it's like but sometimes you have a feeling of people who are going to do great things. Like sometimes you know what I mean. In
Yeah.
any job, whether you're in classroom in school, you kind of have a sense of these people who are like go getters. You're like, I don't know what, but I know this guy is going to do something great. I keep close contact with those people. I try to do that. Like the people doesn't mean like I don't, I that's the only reason or that's the only framework I use in building a relationship. But if I happen to be in a place like that where I kind of know, like, I think this guy, I make sure he's one of the people I keep in touch with.
Wow, so
He or she. Yeah.
powerful. Thank you. You've shared a whole lot, and I can attest to everything you've said because in my own case too, I've switched roles. Most of the roles I've found myself, I didn't apply for them. In fact, some were through relationship with competitors,
Hmm. That's even more interesting.
which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Like on the field, build relationship with people that you are selling almost the same thing. And at some point, there was an opening, and they were like, "Oh, I know this guy is hardworking. He comes to the field." So good things come through unexpected places,
Exactly.
and relationships are key in everything you do. You just can't tell where your next meal will come from, and it's good to treat people right.
Yeah, you gotta put yourself out there too. That's part of it too. Again, you never know where it's gonna happen. You just gotta
You never know.
put yourself out there and do those things that could seem uncomfortable sometimes. Like, in different companies, I know you have like beyond just your day-to-day job, like you have sometimes you have some task or project that makes you work with people from across the company, across marketing or whatever. Like beyond just your regular day-to-day sort of
Right.
people you collaborate with. I find that those things could be very helpful too, because that's one way to develop a relationship with those people who again can then go someplace else and do great things. And now you just expand your network as opposed to just like doing the mailman thing when you go to a job, you clock it in, you do your stuff, and you go home. Sometimes like that. I mean, sometimes based on the season of life you're in, maybe sometimes that's all
Yeah,
you can. That's all the time you have is literally to go to your job, do what you're required to do, and go home. That's fine too.
that's fine too.
But
It
that's
depends
why
on the
it's
season.
sometimes in the season of life. That's if that's your season of life. Because sometimes I even now, I have two kids. I have a 3 year old and a 9 month old, and I don't have the time or the bandwidth to do as much extra stuff like going to social events and all that
Yeah,
extra stuff that I used to do before when I could. But
yeah,
that doesn't mean like I don't. But I don't do the social like the big group events. But I still try to find time to do one on one, like with the people who maybe I used to work with before. I haven't talked to them in a while, but we had once upon a time had a good relationship. We worked on
mm,
something together. I would put whether it's a quarterly basis or a monthly basis, some cadence. I put some time and then we catch up. So yes, I don't have time to do like happy hours to go out for like the big functions, but I still try to make it a point to periodically just think about my contacts, the people who I've had a meaningful relationship with who I haven't talked to for a while and say, oh, okay, let me just put a time. And it goes beyond just the workplace. Part of why I share content a lot on LinkedIn too. I feel like it keeps your name in people's mind. Like people
mine.
remember you.
Yeah,
And so it's not like people come to me like, oh, because I post stuff, people are like, oh, you know what? We haven't talked in a while. Like, oh yeah, you posted that stuff. I just remembered, oh yeah, can we like put some time on Friday and talk. And so people reach out to me all the time to like want to catch up. So it's just like a natural way to remind people of me. And then so I always have conversations. I always feel like, some of those people from old jobs, or even from business school or from college, it keeps my name fresh in their minds, and people are always
yeah.
reaching out to want to like catch up and stuff. So that's again, you may not have the time to do those happy hours, to go out to party, to stay out late, but you got to find what works for you. But it's still important nonetheless. You just got to find what works for you.
Thank you. In 1 minute, can you tell us what you do at Google? Because you said you are in mergers and
Oh
acquisition.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Let me break that down. So for people who are not in finance, so mergers and acquisition is just essentially like buying other companies. So a big company like Google would every now and then buy other company for different reasons. It could be like a specific technology that we don't have.
Hmm.
So we buy. So everyone, I'm sure, listening to this knows about YouTube. You maybe listen to this on YouTube. YouTube was once upon a time a company on its own. It was not part of the Google family. It was its own thing. But then Google bought it and then became part of Google. And then Google scaled it up to be what it is today. Like Fitbit. Fitbit makes like those like watches and stuff to
Yeah.
track your fitness and stuff. That used to be its own company and we bought them. Even Android, the Android system, even Pixel. So Pixel phone started with that Motorola. Google bought some Motorola mobility stuff way back when. So, anyways, big companies every now and then would buy other companies for different reasons. It could be you're trying to get into a new space that you're not currently in.
Mm.
Sometimes it could be because of the talent. Maybe you have some, you could probably, for people who follow the news about AI now, you probably see all the stuff going on with
Yeah,
Meta buying this company for billions or spending hundreds of millions to get
to
some
get some
AI
talent.
engineers and stuff. So sometimes companies buy other companies for talent purposes.
Interesting.
Sometimes it's for technology, sometimes it's for the customers. But either way, mergers and acquisition is essentially the process of making that happen, of buying. It's like when you buy, for people who may have gone through the process of buying a home, like you're buying a home, right? There's a whole process of buying a home, right? You don't just like wake up one day and just, it's not like Amazon. You could click a button on Amazon and you buy a
You
house.
order
You
now.
know what I mean? There's a process. Like you have to look for a realtor, and then you have to go look for do showings, and then there's a contract, and then there's some contingencies, and then there's a deposit, and then there's a mortgage, and then there's all these checks, all this different stuff, right? It's kind of like it's similar to buying a company. There's a lot of things that goes on. So my role is to manage all these different processes,
I see.
from determine like what's the best structure. So there's different ways to buy. Like when you're buying a house, I mean, you could buy it in an LLC. You can create an LLC and buy it on an LLC. Maybe it could be you and your wife are buying it jointly. Maybe it's an investment property. You could do it different ways, right? You can structure it different ways. That's how buying a company is. You could do it different ways. You could like, you could buy all of it. You could buy some of it. You could buy just. You could say I would license the technology. I could. You could do so many things. So part of my
Mm.
job is to like structure it to the way so it meets the goal of the company at the time. Also, like how do we pay for it? Like, okay, is it are we gonna sometimes companies buy companies with their own stock? Like we could buy stuff with Google stock or
Okay.
cash. It could be like how much do we pay? Do we pay them all the cash today, or do we paid in some today? We stretch it out for the next 4 years because we want to make sure like the employees stick around. Because if you buy, let's say we buy a company today and we pay them all the amounts, and then because we buy them for the talents, for example, and then tomorrow all the people leave, and that's why you bought the company.
Mm.
You bought them because of the
For the
talent.
talent,
And
and they
then tomorrow
decide to
everyone leaves.
leave.
Then what do you
What's
left
left? There was the
just an
point.
empty bag, right? So there's ways to structure that to incentivize employees to stay for X amount of time. Obviously, you can't say you're gonna work for us forever, but for
Yeah.
some reasonable amount of time, if it's 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever, some amount of years. So that's part of the structure to say, okay, we're gonna making this up. We're gonna pay 100 million for your company, but maybe we'll pay you 70 today, and next year we'll pay you 20, next year we'll pay you 10, next year we'll pay you 5. All of that stuff is to make sure you don't run away. Because if you run away, you don't get your money.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you,
So
Hayes.
that's sort of the things I do on a day-to-day basis. But obviously, like just from a actual day-to-day, there's a lot involved. It's going to be a lot of like legal stuff too. It's like when you're buying a house, right? There's a lot of
Of
like contracts
course.
you got to go
Yeah.
through. So it's the same thing when you're buying a company. There's a lot of diligence to make sure the company you're buying, like doesn't have like when you're buying a home, you do inspections. So like they have like a leaky roof, you want to know. If you have to
Yeah.
replace the HVAC system, you want to know. If you have to do this, so it's the same. If you're buying a company, you want to know that okay, do they have some kind of problem? Do they have some maybe some legal issues, for example, that might be problematic to me later on in the future? Do they owe somebody some money that I might be responsible for in the future? So you got to do all this stuff to make sure you really, really understand what you're buying. And then when you understand, okay, this is exactly what I think I'm buying, and there's a lot of legal sort of paperwork you got to fill out and complete and sign before a deal is done.
Wow. This has been an insightful conversation. I wish I could keep
I,
you for a
I'm
longer
glad.
time.
I'm glad. I'm glad.
Yeah, I will definitely have to host it one more time, if not two more
I, I'm
times.
I'm I'm open to coming as for as many times as you want.
Thank you so much, Hayes. Thank you for being a traveling immigrant. Thank you for letting your light shine. You can follow Hayes on LinkedIn. He also owns a podcast called Unmuted Moment Podcasts, sharing valuable insights every episode. You can't go wrong listening to his podcast. And on this note, I would like to say thank you everyone for tuning in. Please follow and subscribe to this channel. Till I come your way again, stay thriving.